The story begins with Seo, a game booster whose job was leveling up the account of gamers from Star Ocean. It was his means of making a living, but he also did it for the love of it. When he logged into his main account, he was unexpectedly approached for an interview. To the reporter's surprise, Xiao readily agreed. The reporter had thought he was a tough nut to crack since there was no report on him. He asked if Xiao had ever considered becoming a professional gamer since he was in the top 100. Xiao rejected the idea outright, hinting that he had personal reasons. He tried to use the opportunity to sneak in a plug for his game boosting service, but was cut off mid-pitch. Xiao wondered what was wrong with game boosting. He claimed he was a Tap G since he could boost accounts and still maintain his rank in the top 100. Star Ocean was a massive game and Xiao, who was not loved, dedicated a decade of his life playing it. Its vast immersive world felt more like home to him than his current useless existence. A while later, he logged into the next account he was to boost, only to find himself in a strange place with alarms blaring. His head hurt and couldn't make out what was going on. Then suddenly the guards were called to restrain him, and he wondered what he had done wrong in his configurations. Xiao fled instinctively, but the guards caught up to him and struck him. Shocked with how real the pain felt, he was quickly retrained and locked up. Panic set in as he tried to log out, only to discover he had access to nothing but his attribute panel. Just then, he noticed the game's interface was from a version launched a decade ago. When he caught a glimpse of himself on a reflective surface, he was horrified. Xiao couldn't believe he was stuck looking like a potato in both worlds. Later on, he realized he had been isekai into Star Ocean. A moment later, a chick with huge bonkers came in and introduced herself as Hila, the supervisor in charge. Xiao immediately recognized her as the infamous goddess of death. She was a notorious character from the game's early stages. He was dragged out for testing and realized the grim scenario he was in. He figured out he was in the Manhwa organization from the game. The way it played out, he was either going to be dissected or brainwashed. Terrified, he wondered why he was not isekai'd to a harem world instead. The head scientist handling him was eager to dissect his brain, but Hila opted for brainwashing instead, deciding he would be more loyal. Xiao knew he had little hope of escaping at his current level. Desperate, he searched for anything that could help him survive and found a researcher's database. Xiao grabbed a book and started reading, using it to level up his skills. Surprisingly, the researchers let him continue, fascinated by the fact that he was the first successful test subject. As Xiao's skills improved, Hila was impressed that he wouldn't be a mindless cannon fodder and was taken away. When the brainwashing process began, Xiao quickly realized he needed to boost his mental stats to resist the effects. Just in time, he leveled up and successfully resisted the brainwashing. Afterward, Hila approached him, coldly instructing him that his name was Zero and that he was to devote his life to their cause. Xiao found it hard to focus, with her so close to him since he had never been so close to a female before. Even in a life-threatening situation, he couldn't help but think how hot she was. Finally, Hila asked who he was, and he responded that he was Zero. A while later, the head scientist believed their experiment had some side effects and would be lacking in emotions. Hila thought it was a failure, but the head scientist disagreed. He claimed cannon fodder didn't need emotions. They were to be used as a glorified punching bag. Hila instructed the guard to take Zero to his room, but it wasn't ready yet. Irritated, she told them to take him to her room instead. It was his first time in a girl's room, and he knew this would be tougher than the level 99 dungeon bosses he had faced. Hila reported Xiao's situation to her chief and was told to train him. She tried to protest, claiming she wanted to see her sister instead of babysitting a useless potato head. But the chief wouldn't budge. In frustration, she punched the wall so hard that Xiao got frightened. He remembered how dangerous she could be despite her beauty. Without warning, Hila started undressing in front of him and Xiao tried to stay calm. She came closer to him, and he wondered if this was how his story would end. She then went to bed, and Xiao was relieved to have lived through his toughest battle yet. A while later, Xiao wondered where he was supposed to sleep since there was just a single bed. He squeezed himself on the bed with Hila. The next thing he knew, he was flying through the air. The next day, they took him to the training ground for combat and shooting practice. Hila gave him some basic gear, then proceeded to beat him like a piñata at a kid's birthday party. She pummeled him into the ground until she got bored. Xiao was grateful for the beatdown, because each punch seemed to level him up. He vowed to become the king of this world. The next day, Xiao was out for shooting practice under the supervision of Baroda, the base's co-supervisor. Baroda handed him a gun and told him to hit a bullseye on every target. Xiao wondered if his instructor had a loose screw. He knew that even Yusuf Daikuk would have a hard time hitting the bullseye. He gave it a shot and couldn't get a single bullseye. Stunned at how bad he was, Baroda responded by stabbing Xiao with a knife. Baroda explained that for every bullseye he missed, he would get stabbed with a knife. Xiao wondered why he was set up with the lunatic. Xiao realized he had no option but to endure. After all, he only had one life, and this wasn't just a game where he could respawn. He vowed he would make Baroda regret this, but for now, he had to deal with this mentally unstable freak. Meanwhile, the ever-creepy scientist Lin watched the training and felt a pang of sympathy for Xiao, but quickly refocused on his obsession with dissecting him. Hila told Lin to drop the idea. The scientist smirked. He was confident that once they had extracted every bit of value from Zero, he would get his chance to dissect him. Later that day, Xiao returned to Hila's room. Hila was casually doing her nails, dressed in nothing but a towel. Xiao immediately sensed a trap and feared she might stab him next. Instead, she took him to the bath and instructed him to strip. Xiao, mortified by his small junk, hesitated to undress in front of her. Hila, unfazed, yanked his clothes off and tossed him into the bath. She warned him that if he wanted to survive, he'd need to work hard, or else he'd end up on Lin's dissection table. She explained that the bath was medicinal, and his injuries would heal within the hour. Xiao realized he had to get stronger fast to avoid becoming a science experiment. But first, he had to survive the knife psycho instructor and creepy dissection guy. A little later, Hila and Lin were deep in conversation about Zero. Lin was still obsessed with getting approval from the organization to dissect Zero. He was confident it would go through this time, acting like Xiao was the last turkey on Thanksgiving. Lin then threw a curveball, suggesting Hila had developed feelings for Zero. She swiftly shot that down and returned to her room. Later in her room, Xiao was fiddling with his gun like a kid with a broken toy, which irritated Hila. She snapped at him, telling him to get rid of it since it jammed. Hila believed that anything useless was trash and should be thrown. She told him that if he didn't start making real progress, he would be as worthless as the jammed gun. But just as Hila was about to dismiss him, Xiao surprised her by announcing he had fixed the gun. It turned out that fixing the gun was simpler than fixing his life. He quickly realized that dismantling and reassembling machinery gave him more XP. He wanted to get his hands on more gear ASAP. Later that day, Hila took Xiao out to test the gun he had fixed. Impressed with his progress, she reported to the chief and requested access to the armory. Xiao was over the moon, knowing this was a treasured trove of XP just waiting for him to grind. Finally, he could get a level up that doesn't involve getting stabbed or kicked out of bed. That evening, Xiao and Hilo went to the base's armory, and his eyes practically lit up at the sight of all the machinery. He knew with his setup, leveling up would be a piece of cake. Hila brought him some mechanical books, noticing his growing interest in the subject. She left, but a while later, Xiao showed up in her room again, much to her surprise. Hila, puzzled, asked why he followed her. She reminded him she had already prepared a room for him in the armory, so he didn't need to return to her room anymore. Then she casually dropped the bomb that it wasn't appropriate for him to stay in her room since he was a man. Xiao couldn't believe it took her 2 days to figure that out. He was a little bummed that his cozy nights with Hilo were over, but at least he would be able to level up. In the armory, Xiao got to work grinding for XP and realized with his pace, within half a year, he'd be ready to escape the base. 3 months later, Hilo was still trying to whip Xiao into shape with hand-to-hand combat training, but he was as useless as ever. Xiao, however, couldn't afford to show off his progress, since it would attract too much attention. Hilo warned him that Lin was still pushing to dissect him. Xiao knew it was only a matter of time before they gave Lin the green light to carve him up like a Thanksgiving turkey. A little later, Xiao headed back to the armory, eager to work on his secret side projects. He was thrilled to notice the security camera there was no longer active. Glad that his plan to act like trash worked. Xiao was tired of being watched 24/7 like the Kardashians, minus the paycheck. Unfortunately, dismantling and reassembling machinery wasn't giving him much XP anymore. He leveled up his game with enhancement modification, where the real XP was. But Xiao had to be careful to undo any upgrades before the organization caught on to his abilities. Suddenly, Xiao heard footsteps approaching. The new test subject, 1, entered the armory. 1 had also survived the experiments but was completely brainwashed and loyal to the organization. 1 was disappointed in Xiao, but thrilled the organization was replacing him. Unlike Xiao, one was the ideal result the organization wanted: a soldier who was loyal, strong, and sadly lacking in free will. Meanwhile, outside the armory, some guards were feeling bad for the brainwashed test subjects, seeing them as nothing more than cannon fodder destined for destruction. Xiao was infuriated. He couldn't wait to see the looks on their faces when one of their so-called cannon fodders slaughtered them. Lin finally got permission to dissect Xiao and could not be more pleased. He was practically skipping with excitement. Only Hila seemed to feel any sadness for him. The next day, during their training session, Xiao noticed something was off about Hila. She was fighting way more aggressively than usual, so aggressively that Xiao began to think he might have accidentally eaten her lunch. Hila seemed hell-bent on making him fight back, but Xiao ended up as her personal punching bag. Finally, Xiao mustered the courage to launch an attack of his own, but it was about as effective as a wet noodle. With ease, Hila threw him to the ground like a bag of potatoes and continued to beat him. Eventually, Hila calmed down and stopped, clearly disappointed. She confessed she had expected more from him. She told him not to come for training the next day, since his dissection would happen then. As she walked away, visibly saddened, Xiao realized Hila had been the only one who treated him like an actual person. Everyone else saw him as expendable cannon fodder. He smirked, knowing that it was time for revenge. Over the past 6 months, Xiao had secretly leveled up, pushing his abilities far beyond the system's peak. He had gambled on blueprints to craft useful items, though most of what he got was garbage. He finally hit the jackpot and got the lightweight power arm. Xiao was now ready to launch an attack on those who looked down on him. That evening, a helicopter swooped in to transport the test subjects. Hila, however, didn't care about that and hopped on the helicopter to meet her sister. Xiao had known that Hila would visit her sister. He knew escaping while she was around would be like sneaking out of jail with the warden as your cellmate. While scouring Hila's room, Xiao found a picture of her and Aurora. He remembered that Aurora had possessed a strong healing ability. After Aurora was dissected, Hila went berserk, earning her the title of Goddess of Death. At that moment, a mission pop-up appeared on Xiao's interface, offering a quest related to Hila's past. Without hesitation, he accepted it. Meanwhile, Lin, blissfully unaware of the chaos about to unfold, instructed the guards to bring Zero to his lab. Xiao knew this was his cue, so he took down the guards in the control room and prepared for his showdown with Lin. When Xiao arrived at Lin's office, the guard dropped to the floor like dominoes. Lin was initially perplexed but got stabbed by Xiao. Lin expected backup from the control room, but that was not his lucky day. Lin was shocked by how thoroughly everyone had been deceived over the past few months, but Xiao had no time for his whining and quickly put Lin out of commission. Xiao snatched Lin's access card, which was crucial for opening the gate. Unfortunately, he couldn't just waltz up and unlock it like a buffin. Since only 3 people had the authority to open the gate, he had to come up with a plan. He planned to cut off communication first to buy himself some time. He needed to use his mechanical arm to disable the hidden communication radio transmitter underground. He was glad only few people recognized him, and the few who did were away except for Baroda. He had wished not to come across Baroda. Unfortunately, he was the first to spot him. Xiao felt as lucky as Drake at that point. He quickly came up with a lame excuse, which only made Baroda even more suspicious. Baroda ordered Xiao to raise his head, blowing Xiao's cover. It was time for Plan B. Xiao attempted to stab Baroda and make his escape. The guards, no match for Xiao, were quickly dealt with, and he dashed towards the room. Baroda, feeling like he was in a bad action movie, was sent flying by Xiao's mechanical arm. Baroda tried to make sense of the chaos, but Xiao punctured a hole right through him, looking like Rengoku twin. Xiao reflected on the numerous slashes Baroda had inflicted on him. He wished he had the chance to ask how it felt to be stabbed by his blade. The alarms blared, throwing the entire base into chaos. Baroda's body was found, and the guards scrambled to contact the control room, but there was no answer. Things went from bad to worse when news of Lin's corpse came through. The guards were on high alert, scoring the base for the culprit. Orders were given to shoot on sight. Then came the explosion, sending a ripple of panic through the base. The guards frantically tried to contact the squad stationed at the blast site. To their surprise, Xiao's voice answered, calmly directing them to the scene. When they arrived, they tripped the bomb Xiao had planted. As the guards regrouped, trying to cover more ground, someone noticed the gate was opening. They wondered who could have access to the gate. But before their tiny brains could figure it out, Xiao was outside, slamming the gate shut behind him. For the first time in what felt like ages, Xiao breathed in the fresh, clean air. He smiled, relieved that his plan had worked. Meanwhile, Hilo received the shocking news of Xiao's escape. She couldn't believe it, knowing he was a worthless piece of trash. Orders came through for her to return immediately. She was stunned, not by his breakout alone, but by the fact that he had deceived them so perfectly. Later that night, the Night Owl squad was dispatched, moving on foot in search of Xiao. The commander made a bet that whoever caught Xiao would win a nice prize. Deep in the woods, Xiao hid, confident they wouldn't find him in the dark. But it wasn't long before his confidence nearly cost him. A sniper's bullet nearly ripped his head off, grazing him just enough to remind him that he underestimated them. Xiao had low brain cells, as he had thought the guards wouldn't come prepared with night vision tools. He had to take out the sniper or else he wouldn't make progress. After some tense moments, Xiao managed to locate the sniper and neutralize him. He grabbed a grenade and hurled it at the other soldiers, sending them flying through the air. They quickly tried to retaliate, lobbing their grenade back at him. For a moment, they thought they'd gotten him, but just as they started celebrating, Xiao shot them down, one by one. The commander of the Night Owl was the only survivor. He was furious that a worthless test subject had taken down his entire team. Rage consumed him as he stood over the bodies of his fallen comrades. He couldn't bear the humiliation and swore he would take revenge. Xiao ran deep into the woods, feeling the strain in his mechanical arm. It was beginning to wear out, and his stamina was quickly fading. He knew he had to finish the fight soon, or he would be cooked. Suddenly, the commander of the Night Owl squad attacked, his blade flashing in the moonlight. Xiao narrowly avoided the stab and closed the distance between them, but the commander landed a powerful blow, knocking him back. Xiao realized this would be a tough fight if he had to rely solely on hand-to-hand combat. The commander, filled with regret, blamed himself for the death of his comrades. He had underestimated Xiao, and now vowed to take Xiao's life before ending his. But as emotions got the better of him, he charged at Xiao like a fool who was ready to be ended. His blade got lodged in Xiao's mechanical arm, and with one last surge of energy, Xiao delivered a powerful punch, using up the last of his arm's strength to take out the commander. With the commander defeated, Xiao took a moment to catch his breath. Fortunately, he had the blueprint for his mechanical arm, so he could rebuild it later, provided he had the resources. But time wasn't on his side. The Germinal pursuers would soon catch up, so he continued forward. Meanwhile, back at the Germinal base, the chief was livid. He had lost too much from one failed test subject. The guards suspected that the experiment had mutated Xiao's body beyond what they had anticipated. The chief, however, was shocked that the brainwashing had failed completely. The guard thought Xiao had been pretending the entire time, but Hila had a different theory. Perhaps Xiao had only recently awakened his powers. The chief, fed up with their excuses, ordered another round of brainwashing for the remaining test subjects. One was angry his loyalty was questioned because of Xiao's escape. He boldly told the chief they would hunt Xiao down, and the chief, satisfied, gave them permission, like he was ready to lose more troops. Xiao had survived in the forest for a week, but his supplies were running dangerously low. He had managed to tend to his wounds and was grateful for the endurance boost he'd gained. However, living in the wilderness was becoming a grueling task. He knew he needed to get out of the forest soon. Suddenly, he tripped a trap set by a bandit. The bandit, unaware of who he was dealing with, demanded Xiao's valuables. In a split second, Xiao grabbed the bandit and punched him so hard that the poor guy coughed up his lunch. The bandit, wide-eyed and in pain, immediately apologized for trying to rob him. Xiao, baffled, noticed the bandit's gun had a bent barrel. He shook his head and told him how lucky he was, that if he had shot, he would have lost his hideous face. The bandit, still trembling, begged for mercy, as he had not yet recovered from the blow. The bandit tried to make a quick exit, but before he could slip away, Xiao stopped him. He asked him where the nearest towns were. After getting the information, he gave him a knock on the head and told him to quit his life of crime. A while later, Xiao arrived at a gathering place for wanderers. As he explored, a bald-headed man approached, ready to sell anything he could. Xiao showed him some ammunition, offering to trade it for a map. Baldy told him his price, and Xiao immediately complained that the rates were too high. Baldy did not budge, clearly not bothered by negotiations. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, who stepped in to rescue Xiao from the greedy merchant, Kai, who offered to help Xiao with whatever he needed for free. He even offered food and a place to stay, which would make anyone feel he was a scammer. Still, Xiao accepted the offer, figuring that if anything went wrong, he would cook them. A short while later, they arrived at Hu's home, where his wife Anne had prepared a hearty meal. After days of surviving on scraps and junk, Xiao was relieved to finally eat real food. Later that evening, Hu proudly showed Xiao the gun he used to protect his family, though he admitted he hadn't fired it in years. Since his homeland was annexed by another country, Hu had no interest in the ongoing war. He only cared about his peaceful, albeit boring, life with his wife. Hu invited Xiao to spend the night, given how late it was, and Xiao gladly accepted. 2 days later, refreshed and ready, Xiao decided it was time to continue his journey. On his way out, he ran into the bandit who had attacked him in the woods. To his surprise, the bandit was related to Hu. With a smirk, Xiao teased him about their earlier encounter, but the bandit, clearly embarrassed, said nothing. As Xiao continued on this path, trouble was already brewing. A while later, one and his crew arrived at the Wanderer gathering place, knowing Xiao had likely passed through. The hunt was back on. One arrived at the Wanderer's gathering place, asking if anyone had seen Xiao. The people there denied it, but one wasn't fooled. His suspicion quickly fell on the bandit, who was shaking like a leaf. They searched him and, sure enough, found Xiao's gun. It was clear that the people had lied to protect Xiao. One, furious, threatened to end every last one of them unless they started talking. Terrified for his life, Kai folded faster than a cheap lawn chair and revealed that Hu had taken Xiao in. With no other choice, Hu reluctantly pointed them in the direction Xiao had headed. Satisfied with the information but still enraged by the earlier deception, one decided to execute them all for lying. He wasn't a fan of second chances. Meanwhile, far from the gathering place, Xiao had a sinking feeling. He noticed his backpack had been tampered with. He knew that any missing gear could put the people at the camp in danger. When he realized his handgun was gone, it hit him that the bandit had acted suspicious. Rushing back to the camp, Xiao was met with a gruesome sight. Everyone had been executed. As he scanned the devastation, Kai, barely alive, grabbed his leg and begged for revenge. Struggling to speak, the bandit revealed that Kai had flipped quicker than a pancake, insisting that Hu never gave up Xiao's location, holding out until his dying breath. He covered up Hu with his jacket and sent Kai to the afterlife. Xiao knew that one and his squad would retrace their steps once they realized the direction they were given was a dead end. Anticipating this, Xiao decided to set up an ambush in the Wanderer's tent. He took Hu's gun and upgraded it into a sniper rifle, which was his way of avenging Hu. Later that evening, Xiao hid in the forest, waiting patiently for one and his squad to arrive. One squad headed in the opposite direction after being missiled. Suddenly, their truck's tire popped. One, instantly suspicious, knew a tire didn't just blow out unless there was a sniper around. They turned back, trying to get closer to the source, but it was all part of Xiao's carefully laid plan. As the armored truck advanced, it tripped the bombs Xiao had planted, blowing up the vehicles. The survivors who crawled out were swiftly sniped, leaving one as the last man standing. Confused and furious, he demanded to know who the sniper was. Xiao finally revealed himself, stepping out of the shadows. One was stunned, unable to believe that someone they considered a useless test subject could wipe out the elite squad. At that moment, the chief's voice crackled over one's communication device. The chief tried to negotiate, offering Xiao a higher position in the organization and the chance to keep his memory intact. He rejected the offer, vowing instead to destroy them all. Then, he gave one a front row seat to the afterlife. Xiao realized that, in his current state, he was still too weak to face Germinal head-on. He needed to gather more strength and allies. Using the knowledge he had, he set his sights on the Stardragon Empire, knowing they had forces that could rival Germinal's power. The next day, Xiao boarded a train and began formulating his plans. He had accepted an advanced quest, which required him to join one of the 6 nations. He knew Germinal was expanding rapidly, and the quest required him to contribute 20% damage to their operations, something he couldn't accomplish alone. After some time, he arrived at the Stardragon Empire. Xiao knew he would be a wanted fugitive in Stardragon and couldn't enter through the normal route. Having wasted his life on the game, he knew he had to find a smuggler who could get him in. After making the necessary arrangements, the smuggler was ready. Germinal had secretly conspired against one of Stardragon's enemies, nearly costing them their position among the 6 nations. This made them enemies, making Stardragon the best place to seek refuge and gather strength. Everything looked just as it did when he played the game, which was comforting. Without any immediate competition, he decided to go after a side quest. He soon found a repair store and stepped inside, where he was greeted by two old men locked in a fierce battle of gobang. Xiao also noticed a girl in the store, though he didn't recall her from the game. He asked if they were recruiting apprentices. The girl admitted they were. She was a little touchy with someone she had just met. She handed him a broken device and told him he could stay once he fixed it. Just then, one of the old men, still engrossed in his gobang game, asked why Xiao wanted to be an apprentice. Panicking that his cover might be blown, the girl quickly told her grandfather it was just for a job. The old man, claiming he was the owner of the store, told Xiao he would have to pass his test if he wanted to work there. Xiao wanted to know what the test involved. Lu's grandpa told him he had to create a prosthetic arm for his friend within 3 hours. He could only stay if his friend was satisfied with the result. Xiao had a nagging feeling that he recognized old man Lu's friend from somewhere. Qian, knowing how impossible the task was, immediately began to protest, but Xiao accepted the challenge, much to her shock. He headed into the crafting room to gather materials, and Qian offered to help with the blueprint but declined. He already had a complete design in his mind, and she would just hold him back. Lu's grandpa smirked, convinced this was all just bravado. After all, even a professional mechanic would struggle with such a challenge. But as time passed, the old man started to realize that Xiao might not be an idiot. Sure enough, before the 3 hours were up, Xiao finished the prosthetic. Old man Lu's friend tried on the arm and was immediately impressed by its quality. Xiao handed it over for free, and the friend expressed his gratitude. Lu's grandpa, however, wasn't as easily won over. He grumbled like a little kid, wondering why his friend was thanking Xiao when it was his materials that had been used. With the test passed, Lu's grandpa allowed Xiao to stay. Xiao was thrilled to have a place to settle down. He couldn't wait to dive into the old man's blueprints, eager to improve his mechanical skills and finally have some peace of mind. Unfortunately, peace was short-lived. It turned out that Lu's grandpa's friend had other plans, as he secretly snitched about Xiao's presence to the intelligence agency. Division 13 was deliberating on how to handle the situation with Xiao. They speculated whether he had come to seek refuge or was a threat. The higher-ups decided to approach him neutrally. Recognizing the potential value of keeping him out of Germinal's hands, they made sure to keep information on Xiao hidden. Meanwhile, Xiao went to the junkyard to collaborate with Raccoon, the local underworld boss, who looked malnourished. He offered to lower production costs on firearms in exchange for a labor fee. Intrigued, Raccoon wanted to know what he needed to do. Xiao explained, and after a few back and forth, they struck a deal. Xiao told him to have everything prepared by the next day and took some scraps from the junkyard as a head start. Xiao finally found a way to make more money for the construction of his machines. He also knew that Division 13 was probably aware of his job by now. Once they discovered his skill set, they'd surely come looking for him like he was CR7. That evening, back at the repair shop, Qian asked why he was late. Xiao didn't know she was his mom and explained that he'd been to the junkyard. Concerned, she warned him against going there, then told him to get ready for dinner. The mission Xiao had accepted required more knowledge, and he needed access to Old Man Lu's collection of mechanic books. During dinner, he casually asked if he could borrow some of the books. Old Man Lu flatly refused, but then Qian handed over the book on a silver platter, like a wife serving her husband dinner. Grandpa grumbled, wondering aloud why his granddaughter would choose a stranger over family. Meanwhile, Xiao was quietly thrilled he could finally level up his skills. However, as night fell, a mysterious figure appeared outside the repair shop, watching silently. Qian was puzzled by the slow business and wondered what Xiao was up to. When she asked, he casually replied that he was building a robot for fun, which left her impressed. Later, a customer walked in, claiming his car had broken down. Qian eagerly offered to take a look, but the customer insisted that Xiao handle it instead. Xiao quickly deduced that the man was likely a scout from Division 13. Qian, however, was irritated, thinking the customer doubted her abilities. Xiao reassured her, suggesting she take a break instead. As Xiao worked on the car, the customer awkwardly attempted small talk. Eventually, he asked for his name like he was planning to ask him out. Xiao found it rude to ask so directly, so the customer introduced himself as Yun. He took advantage of the situation and got himself some cigars. After toying with the man, Xiao finally revealed his real name. The customer, behaving like a stalker, continued prying with more questions. Xiao quickly finished fixing the car, clearly done with the conversation. Xiao wondered how deep the pocket of his wallet was that it took hours to bring it out. The customer left and reported to Division 13 with the information he got. Later that day, Keon was shocked by how business had boomed since Xiao's arrival. Customers were pouring in, but she was suspicious. They were all men interested in Xiao. Confused, she wondered aloud if Xiao swung that way, adding that she'd be okay with it. Xiao made it clear that wasn't the case. With business booming, Xiao finally assembled his robot, which he proudly named Rover 1. Just then, a pop-up quest appeared to escape an assailant. He raised an eyebrow, wondering who would dare try to assassinate someone in a heavily guarded country like this. He accepted the mission, feeling fired up and ready for whatever challenge awaited. Xiao took the day off, casually informing Keon that he was heading somewhere. Naturally, she was concerned and asked if there was anything she could do to help. He assured her it was fine. Meanwhile, the Bee Sting, a mercenary squad, wondered why there was such a hefty bounty on someone who looked average. The Bee Sting squad was in pursuit and Division 13 passed the information. Later, Xiao arrived at the junkyard, thinking it would be the best place to avoid civilian casualties. He met with Raccoon, who casually offered him dinner. Midway through, Raccoon revealed he had researched him and discovered he was just a wanderer who had recently arrived in town. Raccoon demanded Xiao hand over everything he knew about making firearms if he wanted to avoid torture. But Xiao, clearly unimpressed, asked if Raccoon was up for the challenge. Raccoon, with a brain as tiny as a raccoon, didn't believe him. Xiao insisted that he checked the latest bounties, but Raccoon wasn't having it and underestimated him. Since negotiations were pointless, he retaliated and swiftly took out Raccoon's men. Raccoon, who was sweating bullets, cried out for backup, but the Bee Sting squad, who had been tracking Xiao, intercepted them. Xiao found himself dashing around the junkyard like a cornered rat with nowhere to run. Xiao was desperate to find cover. Meanwhile, one of Raccoon's goons wondered where the mercenaries came from. Staying focused, Xiao took out his Nintendo Switch and used it to control Rover 1. The robot shot at the mercenaries, and they also opened fire on it, depleting its health. Xiao quickly devised a plan to lure them closer to the robot. Raccoon saw this as his opportunity to capture Xiao, thinking the mercenaries were too distracted by the robot. But moments later, the robot exploded, wiping out the mercenaries in a fiery blast. Raccoon, now shaken, realized that Xiao was dangerous for causing such chaos. At that moment, Division 13 intervened, capturing Raccoon's remaining men. It dawned on Raccoon that Xiao might have been telling the truth about being a big deal. He hastily checked the latest bounty and finally understood what he had gotten himself into. Division 13 closed in on the last mercenary and was about to capture him. But Xiao realized that leaving him alive would compromise his mission. He had no choice but to take him out since his XP was more important. When ordered to surrender, Xiao didn't seem bothered. He was relieved to have completed his mission and was ready to clock out. Xiao was brought to the Division 13 interrogation room. To his surprise, the one in charge of his questioning was Yun, the customer whose card he had fixed. Xiao decided to play around, telling them he would not speak with cannon fodders. Eventually, the director of Division 13 took over the questioning. He asked Xiao several questions, which he answered truthfully. Xiao relayed a message he had learned when playing the game. Darkstar was on bad terms with Cadolis, so he used it as a bluff. Division 13 knew that if Germinal were in contact with Darkstar, things wouldn't bode well for the Six Nations. As a sign of his sincerity, Xiao revealed the locations of 3 Germinal bases in Stardragon. They pressed him for his conditions, but the only thing he wanted was Germinal's downfall. The director reported the conversation to his superiors while they decided what to do with Xiao. The executives argued like a bunch of teenage girls. They later decided to recruit him to keep him under close control. Later, Xiao's mechanical arm was brought to one of Division 13's mechanics. He was impressed with its encryption but called it trash. The director wondered how the mechanic could say that when all he produced was the actual trash. Some time passed, and the director of Division 13 spoke with Old Man Lu's friend, who was interested in recruiting Xiao for covert ops. He had a gut feeling that Xiao would be extremely useful in the upcoming battle against Germinal. Stardragon checked out the Germinal bases Xiao had provided and discovered he was right. They swiftly raided the bases, catching the Germinal soldiers off guard. The Germinal soldiers were shocked they had managed to locate their secret bases. They had thought Stardragon were a bunch of airheads. Stardragon deployed their special agent, and they attempted to breach the security room. But the Germinal soldiers were quickly alerted. Yale the hacker felt screwed since he needed more time and they were on their tail. They decided to buy him time with the new equipment given. When the next wave of soldiers arrived, they blasted them with the arm's overwhelming power. Yale finally got the data, and the team destroyed the base. Shortly afterward, the chief of the Germinal organization received the sad news, which seemed to be the trending occurrence. He was informed that one of his secret bases had been destroyed. Confused, he wondered how Stardragon had found it. He was told that Shio might have had something to do with it. The idea that Shio possessed such crucial information seemed impossible to him. He initiated a secret investigation to identify anyone who might have leaked details about their hidden bases. It was time to downsize the organization. Back in Stardragon, the director was pleased with the special squad's performance and asked for their thoughts on the new mechanical arm. The mechanical arm was like a broken system, and they were eager to use it again in the future. Later on, at Old Man Lu's place, Kion was worried about Shio, but Kion was happy to be rid of him. Kion threatened her grandpa, saying she would mess up his prized wine collection if he didn't help. Kion, cornered, had no choice but to call his old friend for information. His friend assured him that Shio was safe. Kion demanded that Shio be returned since his wine collection was worth more than his life. Shio returned to the repair store, where Kion was waiting, demanding to know where he had been. He casually told her he had gone for a walk, but that only made her furious. She explained how worried she had been. Realizing his mistake, Shio admitted to himself that he probably should have called. Old Man Lu, on the other hand, was shocked to see Shio alive and actually looked disappointed. Kion offered to buy Shio a phone, but he revealed that Division 13 had already provided him with one. Lu was even more shocked to find out that Shio was working with them and told him that he couldn't stay at the shop any longer. Lu then hinted that maybe Shio had other motives with his daughter. Kion's face turned red with embarrassment as her grandpa started talking about wanting grandkids. Both of them were mortified, but Shio quickly clarified that Old Man Lu was just messing around. Kion, still flustered, retorted that just because her granddad said something didn't make it true. Later, Shio found himself in his room, wondering what in the world Grandpa Lu was even talking about. That's when he suddenly got a prompt. The report he had given earlier increased his mission progress, but Shio wasn't satisfied. He wanted to take down Germinal directly. He tried to gamble his way into getting some blueprints when Yoon showed up to congratulate him on officially becoming a Division 13 member. Meanwhile, Kion was still stuck on what her grandpa had said. When Shio went to say goodbye, she misinterpreted it as a confession and turned him down. Shio reassured her, promising he'd come back from time to time but had to go save the world first. Kion told him not to break his promise and they'd bid each other farewell. Yellen visited the logistics department, hoping to find Shuang, the ace of the department. She wanted to know if he was responsible for creating the mechanical arm, but he rejected the credit. Yellen, clearly disappointed, since she came for a genius, not a glitch in the system. Some time later, in the covered ops department, Shio was introduced to the team. The members took turns introducing themselves: Yellow, the hacker; Beat, the sniper; and Yellen, the close combat expert. Yellen stared at Shio curiously, wondering why he was wearing a mask when he was not a superhero. When she asked, he simply replied it was confidential. Yellen then speculated that Shio might be the one who created the mechanical arm. Shio, surprised by how quickly the rumor had spread. He wondered how he had become Elon Musk overnight. Yellen requested another mechanical arm, but Shio quickly informed her it wouldn't be free. Shio was also briefed on the fact that the captain was out of commission. Shio thought it was because of a mission, but found out it was food poisoning. The captain's aura dropped like the stock market. Soon after, the team was assigned a mission to capture Black Spider, an infamous bounty hunter. Shio was annoyed that the XP gained from the mission was low, but decided to tag along anyway. Later that night, Seo, being the rookie, was instructed to be the team's eyes and ears. They set up to snipe Black Spider from his hideout, but Shio suddenly alerted the team that Black Spider had already spotted them. A few seconds later, shots rang out, and a group charged toward their position. They first faced off against Black Spider's lackeys, but soon after, the Black Spider himself arrived. He looked like a forgettable villain, with his mediocre monologue. Yellen immediately charged at Black Spider, leaving the others to handle his goons. She tried to land a strike, but he evaded it. As Black Spider rambled on, Yellen grew increasingly annoyed, wondering why he was talking so much gibberish. He began shooting at her. but Yellen effortlessly dodged every bullet, coming out completely unscathed. Black Spider couldn't believe how fast she was, while Yellen realized he had a lot of openings. Fighting like a low-level grunt, she quickly figured out that he wasn't good at close combat and decided to exploit his weakness. She slipped in close, placing her knife under his chin. He thought he had dodged it, but to his shock, it was an extendable blade. Even though he had clearly lost, Black Spider still tried to act confident. But moments later, he collapsed to the ground. Yellen, impressed by his retractable knife, gave him a compliment, but he warned her not to let her guard down. She was sure Black Spider was done for and wondered why he was acting so uptight. But then, they checked the masks of his minions and discovered something disturbing. They had no faces. Shio instructed his team on how to take down the Black Spider while they eliminated the faceless zombies. When only one zombie remained, Shio told them to keep it alive, but to break its arms and legs. Black Spider was stunned that they knew about his abilities. Shio then shared his extensive knowledge on doppelgangers, leaving Black Spider wondering who Xiao really was. Xiao, on the other hand, was pretty pleased with all the points he racked up through support. The next day, Ki-on expanded the studio like he wanted, so he could have his workshop. He was excited about the flood of orders for his retractable knives and couldn't wait to make it to Forbes. Meanwhile, in the logistics department, the directors were puzzled as to why Xiao had refused to hand over the blueprints for his retractable knife. They looked for someone who could get their hands on one so it could be reverse-engineered. An agent attempted to buy a retractable knife, but no one wanted to sell it, knowing what the plan was. Eventually, a trader offered to sell one at 30 times the original price. Later, they brought the retractable knife to Shuang and asked him to deduce the blueprint. He accepted the challenge, knowing he was nothing but a fraud. Sometime later, Xiao received an unexpected call that all his orders had been cancelled because the knife was now being mass-produced by Division 13. Determined not to give up, Xiao went to the underground arms market and sold a blueprint alongside 100 retractable knives to show how low he could go. The director of research and development later informed the head director that they had claimed the rights of ownership over the retractable knife. The head director wasn't pleased and promptly suspended the research director for selling weapons. News quickly spread that the director of research and development had been suspended for selling arms, but some suspected that he had been set up by Xiao. They couldn't understand why the head director was simping Xiao. Later, Xiao finally got to meet Old Man Lu's friend, who was a big shot at Division 13. Xiao, of course, already knew who he was but played dumb. When Xiao asked for compensation, the suspended director scoffed, bitter over the fact that he had been punished for his crime while Xiao had made a fortune selling the blueprint. Xiao calmly pointed out that he would have made the same amount of money without the director plagiarizing his blueprint. In fact, he claimed he could have sold it directly to Division 13 if they had just asked instead. When they asked what Xiao wanted in exchange, he requested access to advanced mechanical engineering knowledge. He knew how difficult it was to come by and figured this was his best shot. The director begrudgingly agreed and gave Xiao an hour to access the mainframe. They warned him not to try anything funny, as his access would be cut off after the time limit. Xiao smirked, knowing he only needed a minute to absorb all the information. Inside the mainframe room, Xiao found the advanced knowledge on armed branches, the only one in Stardragon, and got to work. The others stood by, puzzled as to why Xiao was giggling like a maniac. Little did they know, he had already acquired everything he needed. Xiao had recently gained the attribute of magnetism and was practicing an energy training technique to help him level up faster. But the downside was, he could only do this twice a day since it drained both his XP and energy like an old smartphone battery. Just as he was wrapping up, a message popped up to assemble that the captain was out of the hospital and calling the team in. Over at the secrecy department, the sly guy who once sold Xiao's retractable knife was complaining. Apparently, Xiao wasn't selling him any new equipment, but no one really cared about his whining. Xiao arrived and was introduced to the captain. Yeo whispered that the captain couldn't stand him. Sure enough, the captain chewed him out, claiming Xiao was getting special treatment. Xiao quickly realized he was seen as a favorite of the higher-ups, which definitely wasn't winning him any popularity contests. Suddenly, an emergency message popped up. A team had been ambushed by the Germinal organization, and a rescue mission was in play. The team scrambled into action, but the captain ordered Xiao to stay behind with Yeo for babysitting duties. Before they left, Xiao handed Yellen some support equipment he had made, which she accepted with a smile. Yeo, sensing Xiao's frustration, explained that the captain didn't mean any harm. Then, with a dramatic entrance, the Special Ops squad returned accompanied by Iron Man, who seemed to have left the Avengers. The Special Ops team geared up for the rescue mission, and Yeo provided the intel on their target's whereabouts. Xiao couldn't help but admire the captain's Iron Man suit. As they closed in on the ambushed team, King Yang breathed a sigh of relief as they opened fire on the germinal truck that had been chasing them. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until Hela showed up. The moment she launched her attack, most of the Special Ops squad went down like dominoes. Xiao immediately took charge, urging everyone to retreat, making them aware that she was out of their league. They were too slow, and Yelin, confident in her close combat skills, tried to defend herself from Hela. It didn't take long for her to realize she'd bitten off more than she could chew. Hela effortlessly schooled her on what real close combat looked like, overwhelming Yelin in mere moments. Yelin kept pushing herself in the fight against Hela, but the gap in their strength was painfully obvious. Desperate, she called out to Xiao for help. Without missing a beat, he suggested using the powered arm, while Beat would use the opening to take a clean shot. As Yelin activated the powered arm, the same one Zero had used, Hela's attention was piqued. She demanded to know Yelin's connection to Zero, but Yelin was as clueless as she was annoyed. In that brief moment of distraction, Beat seized the opportunity, lining up a perfect shot at Hela. The bullet forced her to retreat, buying them some time. Xiao urged the captain to get Yelin out while they still had a chance. It looked like their escape was finally within reach, but just as hope surged, a helicopter descended, blocking their path. Beat cursed his luck. He was out of armor-piercing rounds, and the team sank into despair. But Xiao reminded them of the supplies he had given them earlier. Realizing the special bullets were part of the stash, Beat quickly loaded up. With a well-placed shot, he brought the helicopter down, clearing the way for their retreat. Meanwhile, Hela reported back to her superiors that she had found traces of Zero. After the mission, Xiao and the team returned to base. To his surprise, the captain approached him and, with genuine regret, apologized for doubting him earlier. Xiao, trying to be humble, told him not to apologize since he was a generous man. He couldn't help but think how lame it sounded. Ting Yang requested more of the special bullets Xiao had crafted, and in no time, Xiao was raking in both money and XP. Meanwhile, Shuang, who had gotten his hands on one of Xiao's special bullets, plotted to reverse engineer it for secret production. However, things didn't go as planned. As Shuang attempted to disassemble the bullet, it exploded, leaving him literally roasted. When the directors showed up to check on the noise, Shuang had no good explanation for why he looked like he had just survived a cartoon explosion. His punishment was a humiliating reassignment back to logistics. Meanwhile, the guy who sold his retractable knife was still sulking around, whining that Xiao refused to sell him anything now. Desperate, he begged anyone who would listen, but no one was willing to risk losing out on Xiao's premium gear. On the sidelines, Shuang reflected on his colossal failure, realizing just how foolish his attempts to undermine Xiao had been. Over at the germinal base, the chief expected more L's. He blamed all their recent setbacks on Zero and ordered an investigation into him. He wanted recruits to dig into Zero's background in Stardragon. Back in Stardragon, Xiao was tipped off that Germinal had sent spies to track him down. With this new threat looming, Xiao knew he had to start making preparations fast. Xiao was in full prep mode, busy crafting weapons to brace himself for any assassination attempts from Germinal. He managed to create a titanium alloy, feeling pretty smug about having invested in rare raw materials. Not long after, he got a message notifying him that the handguns he had ordered were now with his squad. A little later, Xiao and Yelin were in the training room, where Yelin tested out his newly upgraded knife. Xiao also tried the handgun and was pleased with how smoothly it handled. Yelin, impressed by Xiao's craftsmanship, begged him to make her a knife as good as his. Xiao, always the overachiever, promised he would. That night, Xiao was practicing his aura training when he noticed something exciting. He had leveled up again. Grinning, he felt good about his progress, knowing that the first batch of beta players wouldn't stand a chance against him. He was leagues ahead, both in skill and equipment. Suddenly, a pop-up message appeared, notifying him about the closed beta. Xiao recalled that the closed beta usually kicked off about a week before the open beta. With 1 day in the real world being the equivalent of 6 days in the game, he started to worry. He realized that during updates, it could take 2 to 3 real-world days, but it would be years in the game. The thought hit him like a brick. He started to panic, unsure how much time he had left. Just then, another pop-up appeared. Xiao attempted to register for player discussions, but to his frustration, his registration got rejected. Determined, he planned to find a way to communicate with the players once they were fully in the game. Meanwhile, in the real world, players were beginning to log into the game. The players had landed in the game and were looking for quests. An old man told them the village didn't need idlers, encouraging them to do various tasks in the village. One of the players planned to explore the world and knew he needed a map. After a while of grinding, he got his hands on one and found out he was in the Stardragon Empire. He decided to head toward the western capital. Meanwhile, Xiao was having a drink near the checkpoint at the western capital. He noticed a player nearby named Frenzied Sword. The player could feel someone's creepy gaze on him. When he found out it was Xiao, he checked his stats and realized he was SSR level. He tried to avoid eye contact, maybe hoping Xiao would lose interest. But then, Xiao spoke to him. Frenzied Sword, feeling a mix of curiosity and dread, asked what Xiao wanted. Xiao, without a hint of shame, made him do some weird requests. When Xiao showed him his weapons, Frenzied Sword was astonished at how powerful they were. Realizing the opportunity, Frenzied Sword decided to follow in Xiao's footsteps and become a mechanic. He asked Xiao where he could find him, and Xiao casually handed him a card with his location. Frenzied Sword planned to keep Xiao a secret from the other players, hoping to surpass them during the alpha test period. Xiao, on the other hand, recalled that Frenzied Sword was popular for being a powerful pugilist. Evil as Xiao was, he had made him a lowly mechanic. He also realized more players had finished the novice village, recalling that most players were selfish. That gave him an idea. He wondered if he could use the players to carry out tasks, like joining his force and taking down Germinal. He went to the players and asked for help, which immediately grabbed their attention since he was a high-ranking NPC. The players were eager, hoping Xiao would offer them something big. However, once they learned the rewards were low, they quickly lost interest. Later that day, Kian noticed a guy following Xiao around, not knowing it was him messing with the player and making him do silly things. However, during that moment, Xiao overheard him talk about Zero, which led him to check the forum. What he saw shocked him. A grade B mission had come earlier than expected, and worse, there was a bounty on his head. Feeling the heat, Xiao knew he had to be extra careful. Kian offered him lunch, but Xiao, too preoccupied, headed back to his workshop instead. As he tinkered with his projects later in the workshop, he received a prompt that an assassin was on their way. Xiao realized this situation needed immediate handling, or things could spiral out of control fast. Xiao quickly left the shop, knowing Kian was nearby, and headed straight to an empty alley. He sensed someone was following him, and before he could react, he was caught in a genjutsu by a Sharingan user. The pressure increased the more he struggled, and Xiao realized the assassin was as strong as Hila. For a moment, it seemed like there was no way out, but then a prompt appeared. His intelligence stat was high enough to resist the illusion. Breaking free, Xiao immediately found himself under attack. The assassin charged at him with incredible speed, but Xiao managed to evade the strike and shot back. He noticed the assassin was using the same type of shield that Hila did, which made Xiao realize this was no ordinary opponent. The assassin, taken aback by Xiao's strength, decided it was time to retreat. He attempted the illusion once more, but Xiao's high intelligence let him resist it again. This time, Xiao didn't hesitate. He took the assassin down for good. As Xiao finished dealing with the assassin, the dependable Division 13 arrived on the scene a moment too late to secure the area. Though their help was a bit late, Xiao appreciated the backup. He informed them that the fallen assassin was none other than Naso, a warfare agent of the Germinal organization. Yuan, one of the Division 13 officers, was shocked. Naso was known to be incredibly dangerous, and the fact that Xiao had taken him out solo left Yuan in awe. While they headed to the headquarters to report the incident, Xiao had a sudden realization. If Naso knew where to find him, then the Germinal organization likely did as well. When he voiced his concern, Yuan reassured him that hackers from the intelligence department had locked down the internet in the western capital to prevent any sensitive information from being transmitted. But Yuan hesitated. If the lockdown had already begun, Naso could have handed off the information to spies in person before it was enacted. Without wasting any time, Xiao abruptly pushed Yuan out of the car. Xiao was in a hurry to catch the spy before they could deliver crucial intel to the Germinal organization. Yuan, shocked by the sudden move, thought Xiao was crazy. He wondered how he would catch a spy he hadn't even seen yet. But Xiao knew exactly who he was after. He called Yalin and asked her to meet him at a location that turned out to be a quiet, unassuming church. Yalin arrived moments later, confused about what was going on. Without explanation, Xiao stormed into the church and demanded to know the whereabouts of Lugorn, the spy he suspected. He drew a near-perfect sketch of Lugorn to help identify him, and after showing it to the church staff, they sent it to the nearest checkpoint for verification. Meanwhile, Xiao warned Yalin that he wasn't exactly known for smooth driving. She brushed it off at first, but soon realized what he meant as Xiao sped through the city streets like a scene from Fast and Furious. Yalin, gripping the seat, silently prayed for her life. Eventually, they reached the northeastern checkpoint, where no one was being allowed to leave the city. Fortunately, the authorities had apprehended Lugorn, and Xiao had arrived just in time. As he stepped out of the car, Yalin's soul seemed to have momentarily left her body from the nerve-wracking ride. Taking a look at Lugorn, Xiao confirmed his identity. Without hesitation, he shot him to gain some much-needed XP, ignoring the shocked stares of the checkpoint officers. At the Dark Crow Valley base of the Germinal organization, plans were in motion. They were preparing to send players to the western capital once the open beta began. The chief was confident that with the players' help, they would finally track down and capture Zero, and the rewards that followed excited them. However, the chief received word that Lugorn, their spy, had been compromised, another failure. Frustrated but undeterred, the chief sent out a large force to capture Zero. Meanwhile, back at Division 13's conference room, Xiao had just realized that the alpha test had ended. His calculations on the in-game time difference had proven to be correct. One of the directors, curious about his distracted behavior, asked what he was thinking about. Xiao didn't hesitate to reveal the seriousness of the situation. His location had been exposed, and it was only a matter of time before more Germinal spies descended upon the city. Xiao warned the team that many more spies were likely on their way, but this time he wouldn't be running or hiding. Instead, he pulled up a detailed map of the Dark Crow Valley base, showing Division 13 that it was far larger and more fortified than any base he had previously reported to them. Without hesitation, he offered to join their raid on the base. Although the officers were concerned that exposing Xiao to such danger might end in disaster, he assured them he could create a face-changing device to conceal his identity. Some time later, Xiao visited Old Man Lu to ask for his old research books. To his surprise, the usually gruff Lu was in a much better mood, and even thanked Xiao for not involving Keon in the recent assassin attack. His focus returned to leveling up, and after some time, he finally unlocked the disguise mask, a crucial tool for the upcoming mission. Xiao's preparation was in full swing. With his newly unlocked disguise mask and a solid plan to infiltrate the Dark Crow Valley base, he was ready to take the fight to the Germinal organization. At Division 13 headquarters, the head director came to meet Xiao, expressing concerns about the dangers of him taking part in their upcoming mission. In response, Xiao pulled out his face disguise mask and demonstrated its capabilities. The team was left in awe by how flawlessly the mask worked. The director, naturally intrigued, asked for the blueprint, but Xiao skillfully dodged the conversation. What he didn't mention was the mask's ability to scan others' faces. The director then informed Xiao that they would be leaving for the mission in 15 days. In the meantime, Yelin was starting to get a little too close to Xiao. Her clueless expressions only irritated him more. To shift the mood, Xiao turned his attention to the captain and his Iron Man suit, offering to upgrade it. Of course, the upgrades came with the price tag. When Xiao revealed the cost, the captain's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. Xiao, unbothered, asked the captain if he had any family. When the captain revealed he was alone, Xiao cleverly asked what he was saving his money for. Reluctantly, the captain was convinced and handed over the payment for the upgrade. Xiao made it clear that during the next 10 days, no one was to bother him while he worked. Fast forward to 10 days later, Xiao's phone was bombarded with messages, but he ignored them. He was deep into his preparations for the upcoming battle. After all the upgrades, he was ready to go. Meanwhile, at the Western Rail Station, King Yang waited patiently for the arrival of the Special Ops Squad. Soon enough, they made their grand entrance in a massive armored truck, ready for the mission ahead. On the train, the leader of the operation, Bijia, introduced himself to the group, outlining the details of their mission. This was a joint effort between Division 13 and military intelligence, and their objective was to infiltrate the enemy base and gather intelligence for the larger troops. Bija pointed out the map of the area, explaining that the base was surrounded by a dense forest, limiting their information. Their only option was to attack from the ground. Susu, the Boobzilla agent of Division 13, chimed in with concern. She questioned why the Hesla Empire couldn't just launch a direct ground assault if the base was so heavily guarded. Yellen, unimpressed with Susu's inquiry, wondered if she thought with her chest. Bija remained calm, explaining that while the base was well defended, there was a nearby town they could use as a staging ground to gather more intelligence. He then highlighted 3 individuals they needed to be cautious of: Kwang, a formidable pugilist, Ji, the mysterious wildcard, and Domon, the captain of the guards. On top of that, Bija had informed them that the Hesla Empire had dispatched a special team for military intelligence that would soon join them in the operation. Just as the conversation was wrapping up, the train jolted violently, and the alarms blared. Suddenly, they were under attack by black earth insects that Xiao knew were tough to handle. The team opened fire on the insects, but to their horror, the bullets had no effect. Yalin foolishly leaped onto one of the insects, using her retractable sword, but it did nothing to the creature. Susu then shouted that fire was the key to defeating the insects, finally being useful. Beat, always ready for action, came to the rescue, setting the insects ablaze and saving the team from a sticky situation. When they arrived at the train station in the Hesla Empire, the team was captivated by the bustling streets and the surprising number of people walking around in bikinis. A representative from military intelligence, Fan, greeted them and escorted them to the commander. As they made their way, Xiao couldn't help but notice the hostile glares from some of the soldiers, like they had kidnapped their wives. Once they met with the commander, they were assigned a place to rest. A bit later, Yeo asked why the soldiers were hostile towards them. The captain responded that it was likely because Stardragon and Hesla had been at war not too long ago. Xiao stepped outside to clear his head and blow some smoke. Just as he was getting comfortable, a notification for a faction mission popped up. His eyes lit up knowing how lucrative this mission was. Suddenly, a girl appeared out of nowhere to interrupt his peace and quiet. She asked if he were from Stardragon. Before Xiao could answer, she lunged at him with a knife. To her surprise, Xiao didn't flinch. Xiao was ready to blow her guts out. She backed off and introduced herself as Na. Bija watched the whole interaction from a distance, like a proud father witnessing his son's first steps. Na later reported back to Fan, noting that Xiao was tougher than she had anticipated. The team set out toward their base near Dark Crow Valley, with Fan admiring their rugged, heavily armored truck. Bija couldn't resist bragging about it, acting all high and mighty about it. Ting Yang, however, lamented their lack of a mechanic in their own ranks. As they cruised down the road, Yellen couldn't help but notice Xiao's surprisingly calm driving. Expecting him to put his foot down at any moment, the captain, picking up on the comment, gave the inevitable command and told him to step on it. Yellen's face paled as Xiao grinned and shifted gears. What followed was a high-speed race that left their fellow troops gripping their seats. The rest of the convoy watched in disbelief as Xiao's truck zoomed past, leaving dust clouds in its wake. When they finally arrived at the base, the special ops soldiers stumbled out, looking worse than ever. They all agreed not to get in the truck when he was on the wheels. Shortly after, the team gathered for a briefing. There were 2 missions on the table. One was to disguise themselves as wanderers to gather intel, while the other was to hunt down sentries for interrogation. Before anyone could voice a preference, Na swiftly claimed the easier mission. That left them to handle the tougher task of blending in with the locals. Soon after, they arrived at Wanderer's Town, where Susu, always practical, suggested they rest first. She argued that asking questions right away would make them stand out too much. Xiao, however, told her that acting hesitant will make them look even more suspicious. He told them to go to the casino and look for a bald man who knew the Dark Crow Valley base well. Later that night, the team arrived at the casino, hunting for the bald man with insider knowledge of Dark Crow Valley. They spotted him soon enough, living it up at a table, oblivious to the world around him. Yaolin wasted no time. She marched over, grabbing him with the force of a seasoned cop, causing quite the scene. Xiao, watching from a distance, knew it was his cue to call it a night. He wasn't interested in theatrics, especially not this late. Meanwhile, on the other side of the mission, the Hesla squad was busy hunting down sentries. Their operation was going smoothly, too smoothly, in fact. They felt like they were cutting through paper, collecting the data they needed effortlessly. As they wrapped up, their squad felt victorious, a sense of superiority brewing against the Stardragon team. Back at the Dark Crow Valley base, News reached Ji that their network had been hacked. One of the operatives reported. Ji, however, wasn't fazed. The data was bait all along. Smirking, Ji informed Kwang of the intruders. Ji suggested they inform the chief and prepare for an evacuation, but not before taking out as many of the infiltrators as possible. Kwang, the musclehead, only cared about one thing: fighting. His eyes gleamed at the thought of facing new opponents. The next morning, Xiao woke up to a prompt signaling that their mission had made some progress. Curious, he asked Yao what had been accomplished. Yao, slightly deflated, admitted they had only managed to confirm the base location and nothing more. Just then the Hesla squad came in, smug and ready to gloat about their triumph. They proudly announced they had retrieved classified information on Dark Crow Valley. Xiao's instincts kicked in immediately. Something didn't sit right. He pressed them for details, and the more he heard, the more he was convinced that the ease of their success was no accident. Na, however, dismissed his concerns, more focused on the thrill of victory. She waved off Xiao's doubts, accusing him of being a sore loser. Xiao knew better than to argue without proof. They wouldn't listen. Determined, Xiao resolved to take matters into his own hands. He wasn't about to let a potential trap unfold without a counter-strategy. Late that night, Xiao struck, taking down the sentries with swift precision. He waited patiently for someone to check on them, and when a soldier arrived, he silently neutralized him. Swiftly, Xiao swapped clothes with the troop and used his face-changing mask to complete the disguise. His infiltration went off without a hitch, blending seamlessly into the enemy's ranks. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Dark Crow Valley base, Ji started to get uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He wondered why they had to attack the second time when they had the data on their base. His loyal assistant assured him that everything was proceeding according to plan. Their retreat had already been arranged by the chief, but Ji wasn't done yet. He wanted to leave the Hesla Empire with a parting gift before they pulled out. On the other side of the base, Xiao moved through the halls, trying to make sense of the situation. He couldn't understand why the enemy hadn't retreated the moment their base was compromised. It couldn't be that they were just stupid. As Xiao continued his undercover operation, he made small talk with some of the clerks, trying to extract any useful information. Unfortunately, they were nothing but cannon fodder, clueless and uninformed. His patience wearing thin, he was about to move on when Domon, the captain of the guards, walked by and barked at the clerks to get back to work. Thinking fast, Xiao made up a weak excuse, claiming he needed to use the bathroom. He followed Domon, but quickly lost sight of him when the captain slipped into a room. Xiao knew there had to be more to that room than met the eye. Using his trusty gadgets, he searched for anything out of the ordinary, and finally, his efforts paid off. A hidden door revealed itself. Standing before the secret entrance, he was about to uncover the base's true secret. As Xiao infiltrated through the hidden door, he was stopped by a guard. Thinking quickly, Xiao explained that he was there to return the IDs of two men he had bumped into earlier. The guard, who was clearly unqualified, gave him the go-ahead. Inside, Xiao found the two men and pretended to hand back their IDs before swiftly tying them down. He demanded information about the base, but they claimed to be low-level members. Xiao wasn't fooled and pointed out that he had seen them entering the hidden door. Under pressure, the men finally confessed and spilled everything they knew about the base's internal workings. Shortly after, Xiao received a prompt that he had completed the mission. It was time to make his exit. The next morning, as the squad prepared to leave, they called for Xiao to open the truck door, but there was no answer. The security soon informed the Hesla squad that Xiao was missing. Na, ever suspicious, speculated whether he might be a spy. In the operations room of the Hesla Empire, Na and Fan reported Xiao's disappearance, further fueling the suspicion around his behavior. The commander, however, brushed it off and demanded to know about the data they had collected. The commander announced his plan to attack immediately, despite the fact that the Star Dragon squad was still in the area. He made it clear that he didn't care what happened to them. Meanwhile, Xiao contacted his captain, providing a detailed report about the base. He revealed that the internal base, where the core members of the germinal organization operated, was hidden from the external members, who had no idea of its existence. Acting quickly, they relayed this crucial intel to the Hesla commander. When asked how he had obtained the information, Xiao explained that he had infiltrated the base in disguise and captured two members. The commander and his officers were skeptical, not fully trusting Xiao, but he wasn't about to reveal his full hand. The Hesla commander demanded that Xiao bring the captured members as proof. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Xiao understood that the Hesla army was about to launch a full-scale attack on the Dark Crow Valley base. Beija, the leader of Star Dragon Squad, tried to warn the commander that their own troops were still inside the base, but the commander was indifferent. He ordered the attack anyway. Knowing that things were about to get chaotic, Xiao prepared to make his move. He had no intention of getting caught in the crossfire of the Hesla Empire's assault. Xiao met up with his squad and handed out the ID cards of the special members since they were going to disguise and infiltrate the base. Yeo felt like he was in a Mission Impossible movie. Yeo and Beat got into the base, though Yeo looked like he might pee his pants at any moment. Meanwhile, Beat, even the cool-headed one, was busy admiring the internal structure of the base. Suddenly, the alarm blared. Yeo immediately went into full panic mode. But it turned out the alarm wasn't for them. The Hesla army had begun their invasion. Jin, the Germinal organization's commander, quickly planned to use the external base staff to stall the incoming attack while they evacuated. Yeo, still trembling, reported back to Xiao, and their captain was furious. Xiao, sensing the inevitable chaos, wanted to retreat, but they weren't so lucky as their truck had been spotted. Yelin, worried, looked at Xiao, who was casually bringing out the captain's suit. He told the captain to get ready to fight. The captain took on the troops with his upgraded Iron Man suit and was satisfied that his money was well spent. Xiao started lobbing bombs at their enemies, raking up XP. Meanwhile, the Hesla army couldn't believe what they were seeing. After a barrage of attacks, Xiao's truck was still standing. They wondered if it were the Fast and Furious truck edition. The commander of the Hesla army tried taking another shot at Xiao's truck, but thanks to a last-minute nitrogen boost, they made their escape. Xiao narrowly escaped being blown to pieces by the Hesla Empire's relentless attacks. Beija, absolutely fuming, wanted to punch the Hesla commander, but the guy couldn't care less. Meanwhile, Xiao was whisked away to the medic, where he realized they were trying to ground him. He called Yo to check if he'd kicked the bucket yet. Yo, sounding more surprised than anyone, said he was still standing strong. He informed Xiao that the external forces were facing off against the Hesla Empire, while the internal members were evacuating. Yo and the others had followed the internal force to figure out their next move, mostly to prevent the Hesla Empire from getting obliterated. Xiao broke the news that the Hesla Empire had just tried to end them, so there was no point in saving them. On the battlefield, the Hesla army was doing a good job of overwhelming the Germinal external forces, until they didn't. Landmines started going off, and the Hesla forces began to suffer major losses. Still, some of the Hesla army had managed to infiltrate the base. That's when Kwang, the big muscle-bound pugilist, decided to step in. He tore through the Hesla soldiers with ease, treating them like practice dummies. When he got the call that the internal force had already evacuated, he casually strolled back, satisfied with his one-man wrecking crew performance. Meanwhile, a Hesla soldier reported back to Fan that Kwang was like a walking apocalypse and had wiped out most of their troops. To make matters worse, they realized they had the wrong base layout all along. Fan reported back to the commander, who, true to form, insisted on pressing the attack. The soldiers frantically searched for the secret door Xiao had mentioned, but came up empty. When the commander finally heard the news that Xiao had slipped away, he lost it. But Xiao, being the clever guy he was already long gone. Ji was pretty pleased with himself. The core staff had retreated, and it was time to hand over his gift to the Hesla Empire, their very own base, which he promptly exploded. The Hesla army commander, now realizing just how badly he had messed up, was scrambling for solutions like a kid who forgot their homework. He was informed that all the soldiers who infiltrated the base were now buried alive. He knew he was cooked if he did not get anything remarkable from this. In a desperate move, the commander called Division 13 for more info, hoping for a lifeline. The captain revealed that his team had infiltrated the Germinal base and could provide intel on their retreat route. The commander clinged to that little shred of hope. Meanwhile, Ji was basking in the glory of finishing off the Hesla army. A short while later, Beat sent info about their retreat route back to base, and their communications got jammed. The Hesla army invaded them, and before Ji could even process what was happening, their truck was blown to smithereens. Ji and Kwang barely managed to escape, fleeing into the woods like they were in some twisted game of tag. Xiao, of course, had found them easily enough, but decided to let them stew in their panic a bit longer. By evening, Xiao had a map of their retreat route and set up an ambush, ready to take them down. Ji, on the other hand, was running on fumes. He was completely exhausted and couldn't run anymore. That's when they heard a gunshot. Kwang dodged it easily, but poor Ji wasn't so lucky. Xiao received a prompt for successfully completing the mission. Will Xiao finally defeat the Germinal organization, or would he find a way back to the real world? That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked the video, and subscribe to the channel for a continuation of this series. And as always, thanks for watching.